I would put some music and some audio cues in this intro.
Spider-Man Lotus is incredible conceptually. Spider-Man Lotus tells a wildly different story than what we're used to with Spider-Man media that hits like a freight train emotionally on paper. And look, I'm aware of the controversy about its production and the public outcry stemming from it. I'm throwing that out the window, since, death of the author or some other theoretical, philosophical, academic gobbledygook, and I'm not really all about that. Because let's face it, countless wannabe filmmakers wish they could make a film of this scale. I wish I could make a film of this scale. Basically, I'm here to talk about Spider-Man Lotus in a vacuum for this most likely brief review of a fan film that has its heart in the right place, at the right time, with mixed results in the final edit. But as previously stated, Spider-Man Lotus aims to achieve a very different direction compared to other mainline media depictions of the character. Some ways to greatness, some ways to its detriment, mostly culminating in a picture that is neither remarkable in execution, but not lacking in ambition. The story, at least from what can be surmised from a film with maybe a few too many detours, is about an emotionally damaged Peter Parker and, in turn, an emotionally damaged Spider-Man after the often regarded death of Gwen Stacy at the hands of the Green Goblin, which anyone familiar with Spider-Man in the comics would know is some pretty rough territory for the wall crawler. You don't exactly sneeze past that storyline, and its relation to Spider-Man Lotus is emphasized through flashbacks. It's essentially a story about a man in grief, especially since her death may very well have been his own fault, and his arc of metaphorically getting back on his feet again through the healing powers of youth and naivete when he receives a letter from a terminally ill child whose final wish is just to meet Spider-Man before he dies. It's a very dramatic direction compared to any official Spider-Man media, whether it's the Raimi films, Sony Pictures, or the MCU live-action variants, which, at points, actually reminded me of the more dramatic elements of the Raimi films. Not a coincidence, I'm sure. The Raimi films probably had an influence on the direction of this film, as that trilogy were very much dramas with cape shit rather than cape shit with drama in it. Spider-Man Lotus just doubles down on the dramatic aspects, and when it works fairly well. There are some scenes that are straight up brilliantly realized, like the montage of Peter watching old footage of his times together with friends when Gwen was alive, even if I highly doubt he would be able to afford a MacBook. The scenes between Spider-Man and the kid are generally good scenes too, helped by a child actor who, for all intents and purposes, was pretty solid. It's hard to find a decent child actor at all, so for a fan film made on a relatively low budget, to land one is no small feat. Granted, the part when they play a Spider-Man game together reminded me of the old AVGN Spider-Man episode.
This game sucks my spider balls! It's horrible!
Also, Spider-Man video game, copyrighted 2006. Probably couldn't cut that bit out, but for a fan film where the character exists in his own version of reality, and it takes place in the current year? That doesn't break immersion, but makes for something to note. You could tell the filmmakers really love Spider-Man to the point of using narration as a narrative callback to Spider-Man Blue. And this is not a knock, as Spider-Man Blue is a great comic and all. That being said, as a fan film that spans a total of 2 hours when including the credits, a story about our friendly neighborhood Spooderman talking to a kid for almost 2 hours wouldn't be very compelling on its own without Aaron Sorkin being involved. So it fills its runtime with, what else? Subplots. And this is where the film kind of falters. You see, it's not just about a grieving Spider-Man, it's about a grieving Mary Jane and Harry Osborn too, and again, this is conceptually good. If the film were shorter, maybe. Unfortunately, Spider-Man Lotus's use of subplots often meander to places that are either superfluous to the core themes and point of the story, or practically go nowhere and feel like the kind of filler you can expect from a TV show that extends its episodes with fluff to reach a certain runtime. On paper, it's interesting that it isn't about Peter alone, but that Gwen's death has an effect on everyone involved here, and on paper, giving your cast their own arc should, again on paper, lead to a more compelling dramatic narrative. On paper. In reality, the arcs for the supporting cast come across as unnecessary extras to a conceptually compelling main dish, mostly due to the writing being serviceable, but not up to the ambition clearly aimed at here. Also, the dialogue early in the film where Spider-Man Lotus does action, yeah, I've heard some people say they can do better than the MCU when it comes to quippy dialogue, but it's often the case that they just end up making material that's only on par or worse.
Oh no!
What?
What are you wearing?
It's my shocker suit.
Your shocker suit. That's what you're called.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you come up with that yourself?
The film basically could have been shaved down in places or better focused if the core plot, the one actually involving Spider-Man, was given a sharper lens than what we ended up with. It's nice to have a Spider-Man film that emphasizes drama like the Raimi trilogy did, and I understand that with a limited budget and such high ambitions to meet. You don't have the conveniences major studios have for stunt coordinators, big-scale action, and on-the-fly reshoots. Being a drama is all you can really be, and you have to make it count. It's just that someone should have given the film's screenplay or editing timeline another examination to see what could have been shaved down. Deleted scenes exist for a reason, after all, and you know you have a problem when the credits should be rolling, but it just keeps on going. And really, Spider-Man Lotus has all the hallmarks of any regular independent film production, including its presentation. No, I'm not talking about its use of CGI during its few action scenes, all of which is surprisingly good for a small-scale project such as this. The film's presentation on the whole is competent enough if, like the screenplay itself, unremarkable for the most part, though it does vary. Some of the cinematography can be downright inspired, like this scene with Harry and MJ in the car. Some scenes look like they needed a few extra lights, but most of the time, the film looks like it's on the level of above-average student films, which is to say that it's better than most student films because, believe me, as someone who's seen a bunch of student films before, that's kind of a compliment. Because most student films are pieces of shit. And hey, this Spider-Man costume is actually really good. Can't say the same for Gabi here, but man, they really went all out with Spider-Man on this one. It's one of those costumes that, yeah, it ain't from a Hollywood costume department, but it ain't from the dollar store either, and even strikes a sense of believability. You can honestly believe some nerd made this costume in his spare time, while simultaneously making sure it didn't look horrible. Props to whoever made it. Props to the CG artists, props even to the music composers for the film who pay homage to past Spider-Man soundscapes, balancing old with the new with some melodies even giving off Danny Elfman vibes, and even the 1990s cartoon show theme makes an appearance. Because otherwise, you have a film that looks and sounds just average, really. Spider-Man Lotus is worth a watch in its own right, if you have time for it. The people behind this project, controversy aside, did this out of passion, and I am of the opinion that some passion projects should be rewarded in some way. It's just a flawed passion project. Like its pseudo-meta-narrative about what Spider-Man can mean to someone or a collective of people, it reaches in, grabs you, and just lets go when all is said and done. There was a time where even I was captured by the film's sheer force of will to make you care about its conceptually gripping core about a man searching for new meaning to his crime-fighting crusade after a loved one has died, and finding it in someone who, in the eyes of its director, should represent you, the viewer. It's not this child that helped this broken superhero find his way again, it's you, the viewer, who did it. And that's very hard to do. It doesn't quite clear the hurdle. Subplots don't entirely work. The film looks mostly average. The writing is merely serviceable, and it all drowns out the key drama Spider-Man Lotus aims to make you passionate about, just as the filmmakers do. But it's not the end of the world. It's not even a bad film if you ask me. It's just one that reaches in, grabs you, then lets you go.